Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and today we're going to be talking about how producers see your script. And actually, I'll take it a little further here and make it really clear in just a second. It's going to go even deeper than that. So here we go. First, we'll talk about the difference between the writer versus the producer journey. Even in the midst of that, I think you will have some insights and start to see how the two think differently and how they can work together. Uh, and by the way, if you ever want to be an A-list, even just that one moment might be the thing that shifts things for you because A-list writers are incredible at working with producers. That's been my experience. I've interviewed 120 some odd A-list screenwriters. And when I talk with them about how they work with producers, they know exactly what they're doing. They know how the producers think. They know how to work with them. They know what information they need at any moment. They translate producer language to writer language and writer language to producer language. They're pros at that. So just this could change your life. We'll then talk about specifically how do producers look at scripts, then how do they look at characters, then how do they look at marketing, and then the key scenes that actually sell your script. There are certain ones that if you nail those scenes, you're in business. If you miss those scenes, the rest doesn't matter. And when I'm saying all this, it just may sound like, wow, I'm bringing you bad news, but the truth of the matter is I'm bringing you incredibly good news if you're willing to look beyond your borders, look outside your world into theirs. That's what gets you where you want to go. So everybody tells me a lot of times people will say, I say, what's your goal? And they say, I really want to have my movie made. I just want to have my movie made. And I say, okay, all right. So the producers ask you to make these 4 changes to the script, and they'll go, no, I'm not doing it. And it's like, they don't know. Well, the technical term is they just screwed themselves. But but the real situation is they essentially disqualified themselves because the goal they want just requires them to think a little differently and to see what's going on the other side of the table. Uh, if you're working with producers, and this has been my experience, I've both been a producer and I've worked with lots of them. In my opinion, what we have going on is it's like you got in somebody's race car and they are racing towards the finish line. And what you want to do is to be there to make that journey incredibly safe and incredibly successful, right? So if you got in and you thought, this is funny, let me cover up their eyes. And I'm just saying weird things here. It's just like, it basically, I just see so many people sabotage their own deals and their own success because they don't understand all of this. So, so you will in just a few minutes. And then we'll talk about the upcoming class, Writing Incredible Screenplays, that we designed specifically for you to be able to sell to producers. That's its whole purpose. Its whole purpose is to give you the ultimate bait, the bait that when a producer looks at it, they just go, oh my God, I can not only sell this, I can also make it into a movie. It's ready, right? And by the way, by the end of that class, you also will understand so much about what's going on with them and how the process works that you'll do all the right things. And all the right things that has you be successful. And that's important. Uh, when I see people, quote, fighting for their rights, uh, 98% of the time, it wasn't their rights that got violated. It was their understanding. They were asked to think outside the box of just writing. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. And please don't take offense to any of this. What I'm doing is I'm giving you the whole truth, the things that most people won't say to writers because they get so much backlash because of it. I'm giving you the whole truth here on what it takes to make these deals. Let me tell you a couple of other things. Inside our alumni, we've had over 600 deals that have been done because those people recognized all the things I'm going to tell you today. We've had a whole bunch of movies made, but we've also had over 100 writers who got agents and managers because they recognized and understood what we're going to talk about today. So I just thought I sat there and I'm looking at this market. We have a small group right this moment, a tiny group of people who in the last 5 days got 55 script requests. They're going to be marketing for the next 3 weeks after this. They're part of a class that we're doing right now where we're taking writers who have been through this class to market. There's only 2 in there that are having problems, and they're the 2 that don't understand producers. and they keep saying, no, I want to write this way. And I say, listen, if you change 3 words here, you get script request. If you keep those 3 words, you don't. And they're like, I'm doing it my way. And it's like, okay. So they're the only ones that haven't had script requests so far. In the last group I took to market, we had another 2 people that were like that who fought against it the whole way. On the very last day, one of them said, okay, I'll pitch the way you want me to, but it's not going to work. And she got 2 script requests that day. So she spent the entire time trying not to change one thing. And at the end, she finally changed it and got 2 script requests because she changed it. And it was something that was like repelling producers. This stuff's, it's hard to learn if you don't just open up and say, let me try it. So here's what I'd like to ask you. This is my job today. I'm going to show you how to sell a script. And what I'd like to ask you is that, I'm the messenger, the thing, don't kill the messenger. I'm the messenger, and I want to help you get what you want. If you don't want to sell a script, then just hang up right now and don't worry about it, because there's nothing I'm going to tell you that is going to be anything other than this, first. And second, if you don't want to know how to sell a script, well, then, just go back to whatever makes you feel good and do what makes you feel good. Because if this isn't your goal, then there's no reason for you to go through all the effort it'll take to be able to make it happen. Now, let me back up. When I came to town, I did not understand the things I'm going to tell you here. I did not. We pitched 5 scripts. We got them into a bunch of production companies, and we got them into those production companies for 2 reasons. One is I fluked on a high concept. And I was just, we had spent 15 years marketing to corporations. So I understood how to pitch already. And when I say I fluked on a high concept, I was just trying to find something that I could go in and say, here's something that you could easily sell. And all I knew, the only thing I knew was if I gave them a hook, I had a chance. So we did that. All the rest, how the script was written, how the rest of the pitch went, if they didn't say yes at the beginning, how I answered questions, all of that, every bit of that came entirely from a writer's understanding. And if we went beyond my first line, I didn't get a script request. If they said yes, or if they listened only to my hook, on all 5 of those scripts, if they listened only to my hook, I got a script request, and then they turned it down anyway because I didn't understand the other things that needed to be there. So that's the first part. First part is I come from where most writers are. I had an online group called Great Scripts. We had 600 writers on it. I spent time with them every single day. I was going in as a writer, and that was it. Second part, at some point along the way, Cheryl and I started to figure this out. I was interviewing producers at that point. And I went in, and the first producer, I was in Disney. We got into this one producer. I sat down across from him. I set my tape recorder in front of him, and I said, is it okay if I ask you any question that will increase the chance that I can sell a script? And he said, yes. So I turned the recorder on, and I said, what causes you to say yes to a pitch? That was my first question. And then I asked him 25 questions about that. I did that. The first 50 producers I did that with, by the end of it, I went, oh my God, I've been trying to sell in the absolute opposite way of how they buy. That was incredibly important. It shifted everything. So along the way, Cheryl and I then started producing. And when we started producing, we were listening to pitches all the time. I went to this one pitch fest. They told me up front, you have to listen to 40 pitches if you agree to this. I said, okay, I will. I'll listen to 40 pitches, but I don't have to request anything unless I want, right? And they said yes. So the first guy sat down, he tells me this big, long story. And at the end of it, I said, what's your genre? Because I couldn't tell. And then he said something, and I was like, okay, this isn't for us. And it wasn't for us before that, but I was just trying to figure out his genre because the whole time I had no idea. I couldn't tell, is this a fantasy movie? Is this a comedy? Should I laugh? Is this dramatic? The way he was telling it could have been almost any genre. The second one, I thought, here, I'll just make it easy. I said, we are going into major production companies. The first thing I need to know is what the genre is, what the title is, and what the high concept is. I said, if you could tell me that first, then I'll listen to everything else, and it'll make it easier. From that point on, I told the other 39 that sentence. Only 2 of them told me a genre, title, and high concept. All the rest just told as much of their story as they could. At the end of it, I requested only those 2. And then I went around and talked to all the other producers, and it turned out they had requested only those 2. All the other writers had sat down and told as much as they could about their story, and didn't tell the things that mattered to the producers. And because of that, they had no chance. Now, again, I'm being very direct there. But if you understand this, you'll go into pitch meetings in a completely different way. And you will have such a much better chance of success. Last thing I want to tell you on this. So at one point, I'm at Warner Brothers. Cheryl and I are in between pitches. We had like 4 pitches we were doing that day at Warner Brothers. So we're walking to the commissary, and this guy stops us and he says, are you guys Hal and Cheryl? And I said, yes. And he introduces himself and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we've talked with you. He goes, I have to ask you a question. He says, you've pitched me 4 different projects. And I said, oh, yeah, okay. And he goes, all of them were high concepts. He says, how are you doing this? And I was like, are you asking how we're finding them? And he goes, yes. And I said, well, we work with about 1,000 writers. And what we've done is we've told them that's what we're looking for. And then we only select the ones that have that. And he goes, oh man, he says, you guys are amazing. He says, whatever you're pitching today, can you stop by my office when you're done? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So we did a fifth pitch that day. But that was the point where I recognized it. It was like, oh, we made a really smart decision. We were coming in and telling them what they needed to hear up front, and then giving them whatever story details that they wanted to hear after that. So there's the second key. First key is make really, really good decisions on what you're presenting to producers. The second key is you tell them what they need to hear first, and then what they want to hear after that. And all the other stuff that you've got, as soon as they request the script, you stop talking right that moment. As soon as they request the script. I had it happen 25 times. I'd be mid-pitch and the producer go, oh yeah, go ahead and send it to me. And I would just stop in the middle of the sentence. I'm not going to say another thing. All I'm going to do at that point is confirm when to follow up. It's like, okay, we'll get it to you today. When do you want me to follow up? Because I don't have to tell the rest of that story. He just requested the script. He's going to read the script. The one thing you don't want to do when they request something is keep talking. The last pitch meeting that we had, pitch series, we were doing it all on Zoom on that one. And so I got to sit and watch the pitches. And I trained the writers up front how to pitch, how to do it. And then we would do pitches, we'd watch them. I'd watch them as they were doing them, and then we'd do a retraining, and then we went back into another set of pitches. But this one guy, I told him 5 times, listen, the moment they say yes, stop talking. And I watched while he talked 4 producers into requesting a script. And then as soon as they requested it, he very quickly then talked them out of it. He wanted to tell them more details. He wanted to tell them things that he liked about the script. And all 4 of them said no. And I said, man, you have a special talent. You're good. You are great at this. You're great at talking them into it, and then you're great at talking them out of it. And he goes, I don't know why they keep changing their minds. And I said, well, does the fact that you kept going after they said yes, do you think that has anything to do with it? And he goes, well, they should appreciate all of that. And it's like, well, yes, they're going to. They're going to appreciate it inside the script. Now, sorry for the rants, but let's go on here. Because if we accomplish this right here today, your life has changed. Right? That's our objective. Okay. So let's start with this. Compare your journey to the producer's journey. And this is a big part of it. The writer starts with the idea, and I'm going to talk in generalizations here. Writer starts with the idea. They create characters, they create structure, they start writing drafts. Somewhere along the way, they get feedback and they do the editing. Now they have finished up a script that is incredibly well written and was something that came from who they are. So that's that. Every bit of that, when you finish a script, you should be incredibly proud of yourself. And I think just to be honest with you, I think there's 2 kinds of writers in the world. There are the ones on one hand who absolutely love what they do, who feel great about it, and who write like crazy. And then on the other hand, there are the writers who are in pain, and who this is a painful process. I was interviewing at one point, we had a live audience. I was interviewing 20 A-list writers in a row. And on the 3rd one, I said, so what's writing like for you? Right? Because the last 2 had said, all these amazing things. And he goes, you know the old saying. He says, you put out your arm, you open up a vein, and you let it bleed. And I was like, and that's what writing's like for you? He says, it's painful, man. And he told us all the reasons it was painful, all the difficulties he had, and a lot of it just had to do with his creative process. But let me just say one other thing, because I just want this to be something that helps you. Every time you finish something, I want you to take even one moment and congratulate yourself sincerely. Because one of the big differences between the writers who were in pain, which what I found after that was even the A-list screenwriters, about 20% of them, this is a really painful journey. They're in pain constantly. And after I understood that, I started asking them questions about how they think when they're doing it, and what's going on in their mind. And their thoughts are things like, it's never good enough, no matter what I do. This one guy said, even after I turn in the final draft, all I can think is about the mistakes or the problems or the things I didn't solve or how they're going to change it and edit it, and it's not going to be the way I want it to be. And it's like, okay, he was coming from a purely pessimistic perspective, but he also was torturing himself. So one of the easiest ways to change that is every time you complete something, congratulate yourself and feel it really, truly. If you write a version of your character and it's a first draft and you know it's not as good as it can be, but you know what? For a first draft, you did a good job. Congratulate yourself. Celebrate for a moment. Go out and do something fun. Don't end anything with pain on this. Focus on what makes you feel good and feel that. And if you do that, by the way, every step of this way, you're going to at least feel something really good. And because of that, you'll come into this in a more healthy and exciting way. You'll look forward to writing. It won't be something you'll put off, all of that kind of thing. So it's worth doing. Just add just that one thing. I celebrate every single win. Yay! You know what I mean? And have fun with it when you do it. I know that was a little shocking, but okay, then we've got the producer's journey. And I want you to just notice how different these are. The producer's journey starts when they option the script. So, by the way, to get to that, they may read 100 scripts to option yours. They may read 70, somewhere in there. It's like, when Cheryl and I were producing, we probably read, I would say at least, we were very careful up front. We wanted to hear the pitch first to know we had even a chance of selling. But we probably read 30 to 50 scripts in order to pick one to go market. And then after that, after we optioned it, then I went back with the writer and I worked with them all the way through the script. We looked at every single scene and said, is there a way for it to be better? Because we weren't just going to some production company. We were going to the ones on the lots of the studio, the biggest production companies here. And Cheryl was a master at getting in those doors. That's what she had done in our corporate training business. And so we got into every door we wanted to get into. So we knew up front, as long as we had a great pitch and the writer was willing to go over the entire script with me and we do what we can to elevate everything, they had a real chance of making a deal. So that's the first part. At this point, it's still us working with them. Then we bring on a director. And this is a whole different process. The only thing it has to do with the script for the director is at some point that director is going to look into that script and start saying, What kind of changes do I want to make in order to make this movie something that I feel is visually spectacular? And if the writer is willing at that point, then the director will work with them on doing that. And now the writer gets to have another level of the journey. And they make sure that nobody fires them. So, and this is important. I'll talk about it in just a minute here. From there, we cast actors, right? So casting actors is all about these characters, and I'll talk more about it in just a little bit. But just keep this in mind. You're writing characters, you want somebody to play them, but you also want those characters to be something that's the ultimate bait for those actors. So a lot of times, I'm telling you, like half of the scripts or more, I had to go back with the writer and say, okay, let's look at your characters. I love what you did with these things. Now we need to take them to this level up here. We need to elevate these characters so we can bring on actors. We need to make these characters even more interesting, more compelling, give them more of a hook, give them more range so that these actors will look at it and say, wow, right? Then it's about funding. And funding sometimes has something to do with the script. There are times where they'll say, we'll only fund this movie up to $15 million. Or up to $5 million, or up to $30 million, or whatever it is. And now we may have to go back and say, okay, the way this was written, it was written for a $100 million movie. We're getting 30 million. What in here can we make changes on that we still make just as dramatic, just as interesting, just as compelling, but we change the location that's going to be expensive, or we change, we're not going to have, 400 extras in this particular situation. We'll write it a different way in order to be able to get the funding. And if you can do that over here, you're going to be a star in the producer's eyes, and your movie gets funded. And then it's about a distribution deal. Is this going to go through the studios, through the streamers, through some other independent distribution company like Lionsgate or something like that? Where's it going to go? And do they have notes also? And finally, then it's about releasing the movie, right? Throughout all of this, there are times when the producer and the writer will be working together. And part of what you want to do, if you're going to be the writer on this, is you want to make it as easy as possible for this producer to get your movie made. So the people, when somebody comes in, like we had this writer, and I'll talk about this now. She was one of those people. Her other writer friends had told her never to let a producer change something in her script. The producer wasn't trying to change something in her script. The producer was going back to her and saying, here, we need to make this change in order to bring on this director or this actor, or to get funding, or to get the distribution deal. And our writers started refusing. The producer gave her a list. Here are the only six changes that needed to be made in this movie. The writer decided to go on strike at that point, and she told her that you only get the script if it stays exactly the way it is. Now, by the way, the producer had already optioned it. So the producer just immediately fired her that day. Fired her, brought on another writer. My writer had in the contract this one line that said she would be sent a draft, or she would be sent the script of every new draft that was done. So we're sitting there for the next 6 months watching while this other writer just butchers her script. I mean, just destroys it. And she keeps going, why is he doing this? Why is he tearing this script apart? And I said, it's pretty easy. because he needs to get at least 50% new stuff into that script so that it's either written by your name and his, or if he goes above that 50% mark, he has the chance of it being only written by him. And she goes, doesn't he care about the script? And I said, it's your script. It's not his. All he cares about is getting the credit. So she got a final draft at one point, and it was horrible. It truly was. He did have some good writing. He did some things in there that were good, but what he did to the story and to the characters and the script and everything else was just like, it was horrifying. So she goes, isn't there anything I can do? And I said, well, what if you went back to that list of notes that the producer originally gave you, and you go in and you honor them as fully as you possibly can? And she goes, well, I don't like one of them. And that was when I had this thought. She killed this deal over one note. But I said, okay, the only way I can think of to get you in is if you honor all of them, and if you do it in such a way that the producer is going to look and go, oh my God, that's the way I wanted that script written. So she did it. She spent a week. She made sure every single note was honored, and honored in the best way she possibly could. We made a list. Here's this note that you gave, and it's honored on page 44 through 49. We made a list like that. She sent it back to the producer. She said, I looked at that last script. I don't think the writer's doing you a service. I'd like to show you the changes that I made based on your exact notes. The producer read it. She looked at the other writer's script and she went, wow, it's just so far out. She fired that guy. She hired my writer back, and they went into production together. It was the worst year of her life up until that moment. But she learned something. It's like, you got a producer on this journey. If you want your project to be made, it's not just this. This is the start of the journey. Now it's about this and this and this and this and this and this. And the more you can help out to make those things happen, the more likely your movie gets made, and the more likely you succeed. Let me tell you one more quick story. I had a writer or a producer call me up. He said, I need a writer who can do horror movies. And I said, okay, I've got about 30 of those that are really good. And he goes, no, there's one more thing. He said, I need her or him to be able to take notes, make whatever changes I'm suggesting, and make it work. And I was like, okay, I have one writer who's incredible at that and does horror. We did the first meeting. She showed she could do that. He gave her notes right at that moment. She had made some changes to the script based on his previous notes. He said, what if I don't want any of those? And she goes, well, what do you want? And he made a list. She sat there while him and the producer and I were eating lunch and chit-chatting back and forth. She went through the whole script right in front of him. She turned it around and she says, okay, if you want me to do these notes, here's the pages I'll make changes on. Here's how I'll make the changes. Here's what they'll look like. And the producer went, you're hired. They went through 10 drafts on that script. He called me a year later and he says, I'm sorry I haven't been in touch. He says, I've been working a lot. I just have to tell you, first I have to say thank you. He said, that movie would have never been made if it wouldn't have been for that writer. And I said, oh, yeah, she's really good. He says, no, she's incredible. He says, I had a director on there and me and the director were arguing like crazy. And she was able to listen to us, figure out what needed to be done, go back and do it, and appease both of us. He said she was incredible at that. He goes, I'll work with her anytime from now on. And they did. They did 3 movies together. And he recommended her to other producers. And it was because she could do this based on the needs of this. Now, if you can think that way, you're a star. You're a star in this industry. You'll go to A-list. But if you can't quite think that way, as long as you understand this, and they say, okay, we need to cast actors. We're going out to this kind of actor. Can you make some changes in the character to fit that particular actor? This actor wants more risque stuff. They want more extreme things. They want actions that are going to be, crazy. They want moments where they're crying their eyes out, and then right afterwards they need to be shown as a total hero. Things like that. It's like, people know they're actors, and if producers have been talking with them and working with them, they have an idea. So if you can go back to your lead character and make that change for them, and it gets that actor, they're going to be indebted to you forever. But even more important, and this is what the A-list actors or writers said to me. I had one, I said, what if they give you a whole bunch of crazy notes from this side that just completely will change all kinds of things in the script? I said, does that ever happen to you? This is Alan Loeb. He's the writer of Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps, the sequel to Wall Street. He's written a whole bunch of other movies that you've seen. I said, does that ever happen to you? And he goes, all the time. And I said, don't you just hate that? These were in front of a live audience. I said, don't you just hate that? And he said, no, that's where I shine. And half the room laughed. And I was like, I can't tell if you just said a joke or if you really mean that. He goes, I totally mean that. He says, that's where I can show them I can do things they can't imagine. He said, when they give me crazy notes, I'm going to find a way to make it work and make the story better. And it's like, oh, wow. He says, that's my reputation. He says, they know I can make anything happen in a script, and that's why they hire me. Now, this is a higher level of it's just the words, right? This is beyond that. This is what you're looking to do. And it doesn't mean you have to do it in one day. It's like this may take 6 months or a year for you to get figured out. But once you can do it, then what happens is when you interact with a producer, you're their dream writer. You're the one who can make all of these things happen. Really, truly. When they have problems getting funding, they'll come back to you and say, can we make certain changes in order to get that funding? Right? When they have problems getting actors, they'll come back to you and say, can we make changes in these characters in order to get those actors? Right? When they bring on a director, we had this happen. A director came on one project that one of our writers had written. It ended up winning a big contest. It was a really well-written script. The director came on, and the very first meeting, they got together at the studio. The director comes in, he sits down, and he looks over and he says, you're the writer? And he points to our writer, and the writer says, yeah. He says, well, you don't need to be in this meeting. And the writer's like, no, I'm here to take notes. And he goes, no, you're fired. And it was like, he didn't even know the writer, but he was just, that was what he does every time. And my writer said, could you just give me one draft? I can do it. I can do whatever you need. And the director says, I'll give you 10 pages. Now, they met 2 days later. The writer went back, reviewed the script, looked at everything he thought the director might want to change based on his previous movies. They met 2 days later. The director gave him 17 notes on the first 10 pages. And my writer looked at him and he said, right off the bat, there were 4 of them I knew I could do. The others, I wasn't sure. So he talked about those 4, and then he said, let me think about the others. He went home. He took the model that we have. He went through that 10 pages. He rewrote it to fit what that director wanted, took it back to him, and the director hired him on the spot to do the rest of that script, and then hired him to write a TV series for him. And it was the first draft of a TV series, but he got hired on a TV series because he understood this and this. Now, sorry, I don't mean to beat this to death. Let's keep going. So here's how producers are looking at your scripts. And everything I'm telling you, by the way, if you're open to it and you really want to move forward, every single thing I'm telling you is good news. Please just know this. I just want to say this because sometimes it sounds like I'm talking about things that writers won't like, but the things I'm talking to you about are the things that will save your project. It will save you when you're in the room with a producer or a director. It will save you when they come back and give you crazy notes. It will have you look better in their eyes, and it will get you the job when you have to audition like my writer did with that 10 pages. That was his audition. And by the way, if he would have failed in any way, then the director would have felt completely justified, and that would have been the end for him. But it wasn't. It was actually the beginning. So the producer looks at scripts this way. They look at the pitch first. This is back to that pitch fest when I was telling everybody I need to hear the genre, the title, and the high concept first, because I'm presenting to production companies on the lots of studios. And that's how they start to make decisions about whether they want to listen to the rest of the pitch. So the pitch, your pitch tells them whether this is something that can sell, whether this is something that can be produced, whether this is something that matches the budget range they're working in. Even, you don't even have to say the budget range. I say genre, title, pitch. Most of the time, genre, title, high concept. Most of the time, the producers requested the script right then. And if they do, you just stop talking, confirm where to send it to, and when to follow up, and you exit that meeting graciously as fast as possible. Get out of there while you still have the deal intact. Then it's about the characters. And the reason we go to characters next is because they're going to be selling to actors, and they're looking at your character introductions and just asking, can I sell that? Right? If you knew the movie Shakespeare in Love, that movie, I'll tell you the story, the Geoffrey Rush story. Here's what Geoffrey Rush said. He said, I was in my agent's office. He handed me this script. I was only 3 pages in. It was so inventive. I was laughing out loud. I looked up at my agent and I said, I've got to be in this movie. Now let's pause for a second so you know what just happened. That's the quote from what he said in the special section of the DVD. What just happened was this. He only read his character introduction. That's all. He didn't read anything else. 3 pages in, that was just the thing with Henslow in the theater, on the stage, being tortured, and he makes a deal with the finance guy that it very much looks like a deal that writers and producers have to make with the studios. You know, and it's like, it was funny and it was interesting and his character was amazing and he said yes. So that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for you to tell us big backstory about your characters. They're looking for, what is it about this character that's going to have an actor say yes the moment they read their character introduction, right? Then it's the marketing. And the producer, when you're pitching, their first decision is this. It's like, okay, do you have a pitch I can sell? If it's a yes, fine. Then are these characters something I can sell to actors? Yes, great. Then it's about the marketing. And let me just tell you a secret here. If you're pitching in a way like we pitch, where you're not telling them all kinds of details about your story that they get lost in. If you're pitching the way we pitch, they're already seeing the marketing. And I was in the middle of a pitch at one point, and this producer's just sitting back and he's looking, and I said, "What are you seeing?" And he says, "I'm watching the trailer, man." And so I stopped and let him watch the trailer. I was talking with another one, and I said, "What do you, I'm halfway through the pitch, and he seems to be excited about it." And I'm thinking, I already did the genre title, high concept, and then I went to the transformational journey. Both of them I had written in a way that was compelling. And this guy was into it, and I said, "What are you thinking?" And he says, "I just in my mind looked at 3 different movies that are this genre in this budget range and how they were marketed." And he says, "I figured out how to sell this movie." And it's like, I'm not saying all of them are doing that at that moment, but I have talked with quite a few that if I say a horror movie in this range, and by the way, it's about vampires, they're looking and they're going, "Okay, how was Twilight marketed? How was this other vampire movie marketed?" Right? And they're seeing the marketing, because if they can see the marketing, they know how to sell it to the public, right? And they also often know the numbers. They know Twilight was marketed this way. They spent $21 million on it. It made back $242 million. Now, I don't know if those are the accurate numbers. I'm just making those up. But they know that because that's their job. So you told them a pitch, that got them to go, "Okay, I can move forward." You gave them the characters. "Okay, I can sell them to actors." Now you've given them enough information for them to be able to see the marketing on it. From there, then they're going to look at the script at the key scenes first. I'm in Pierce Brosnan's company at one point. This was the first time I really understood this key scenes thing. I'm talking to the producer there, and I was doing a series of interviews with actors, production companies. I said to the producer, "So first, how many scripts do you look at before you decide on one to hand Pierce?" And she goes, "Oh, I don't know, 75 to 100 probably." I said, "Okay, what's most important to you in that script?" Now, different producers will answer it differently based upon their business and what they're doing. But I said, "What's most important to you in that script?" And she goes, "The scene where they introduce the character Pierce is going to play, and the scene where that character goes out." And I was like, "So if, like, let's say his character isn't introduced to the end of the first act." And she goes, "Okay, well, on that, I would just say no." And she goes, "My guy's an A-list actor. So if we have to wait till the end of the first act, he's not the lead." I said, "Okay, all right, okay. So let's say they introduce the villain first, and then we're 4 scenes in and they introduce yours." She goes, "Okay." So what I do is I put one of those little tags at the top of it, and I walk over and I hand him the script and I say, "Here's where your character's introduced. Here's where your character goes out." And I said, "All right, then what happens?" And she goes, "Then I wait." And I said, "What's that like?" And she goes, "Terrifying." I said, "Okay, so what's going to happen next?" And she goes, "One of 2 things. He either throws the script into the trash or he keeps reading." And she goes, "If he keeps reading, we're likely going to option that script." Now, all she was talking about was one of the key scenes that she handed an actor the place where that actor is introduced. That's not just 4 lines. And there's a lot of writers who think it's just 4 lines. It's just those 4 lines where you have the right to put in anything, where you can tell backstory, or you can tell, why they're afraid of this thing or whatever. But it's not just those 4 lines. Your character introduction for that character is the entire scene. And if you write that entire scene with the focus of, my job is to get an actor to read this, and when they read it, they say yes. Back to the Jeffrey Rush thing. That scene was written for that. If you do that, that's one of our key scenes, right? So there's certain scenes in this script that sell this movie, that make it happen. And I'll show you those in just a second. But those scenes need to be significantly better than the rest. And if they aren't, it's a huge mistake. Now, let's go on. Then it's about the writing. So the producer is looking at all of these things before the writing. And let's be clear. Let's say it a different way. The producer is looking at all of these things before the story. If these things don't work, they don't read the story. If these things work really, really well, and I've asked 100 producers this question. Let me just ask you something. This is my question. I'm in front of live audiences. Let's say you have a choice. This script is incredibly well written, but it doesn't have a strong pitch. You don't think the characters will sell to actors. And there's some of those key scenes, especially the opening scene, that are not strong. Do you say yes? And they'll say, no, I don't. I might use the writer for a writing assignment, but they didn't get the things that make it so I can sell. I said, okay, let's go to the other side. You've got a script that is a good script. It's not a great script. It's a good script, but it has a great pitch. It has amazing lead characters that can be sold to actors. It makes total sense from a marketing perspective, and the key scenes just kill. Do you say yes to that one? Every single one of them said yes. I said, but the writing's it's fairly average. And they're like, well, we can work with the writing. If this stuff is great, we can work with the writing. If this stuff doesn't work, even the best writing just gets you a writing assignment. Now, if that's sad news, I'm sorry about that. I had to hear it from about 40 producers before I really, truly believed it. I kept saying, but wait a minute, doesn't the writing matter? And they're like, well, yes, it does. But this stuff is what gets the financing. This stuff is what gets the major players involved. You take the same movie, you take Tom Cruise out of it, and you put some fairly unknown actor, and that movie goes from a $100 million movie to a $2 million movie. There's a huge difference. So now, again, if what I'm saying to you seems like if you're taking offense, please don't, because first, I'm not even sure exactly who I'm talking with right now. We have a lot of people here. I'm not talking with anybody in particular, and I'm not talking about anybody's specific script. I'm saying, listen, if you're going to do all this work right here, and you are, right? I did it. You're going to do all this work. If you want to sell, then you need to make sure all of these are in line. If these are there, you sell. That's it. Then the writing just has to be good enough that they can work with it. And by the way, you'll make the writing better than that. So just starting with that. Now let's look at something else here. I'll try to lighten up. So how they look at the pitch. Well, really, here, let me back up. The first thing is they're looking at the pitch to see if it can sell, right? That's what they want. So can we sell it inside the system? Can we sell it to a studio, a streamer, or a distributor? Can we sell it to a funding source, right? They're looking for that from the beginning. And all of that is going to be based on, can we market this thing? So will it be easy to pitch? This is the other part. I have somebody yesterday who is about to go into a pitch meeting that she set up on one of the services where she paid $35 or something like that to be face to face with this producer. And I said, okay, give me your pitch. And she started talking, and about 2 minutes later, I interrupted her and I said, can you hang on just a second? Just a moment, please. I can't tell what you're selling. I have no idea what this movie's about. You're telling, how far into the script are we right now? And she goes, about page 9. And I'm like, okay, you've talked for 2 minutes and we're on page 9. And so everything you've done is set up. Is that right? And she goes, yes. And I said, what is it setting up? And she couldn't explain it. Here's the problem with all that. Let's pretend she could explain it. Let's pretend she did know the answers. The problem still is, if you do a pitch like that, it's not easy for them to pitch inside the system, right? What happens inside the system, and this is the other part, will it be easy for my team to pitch? So the producer heard your pitch. While you're pitching, they're thinking, will my team be able to pitch this? And if it's a long, complex pitch, the answer is no. Because their team is, first, they're fallible. There's some of them that are going to make mistakes. Second, they're like, they're going to shorten it. They're going to cut it down. They're going to miss things. It's going to be, they're going to leave something out because it wasn't easy to pitch in the first place. So your job, if you really want to get a producer to say yes, is to give them a pitch that is incredibly easy. That's why I do that. Genre, title, high concept, and I stop talking. And if my high concept is a hook, which mine always are, because I won't take anything in that's not, if it's a genre, title, high concept, and it's everything matches the genre, the title is a great title, the high concept is a single sentence that is powerful and hooks them, right? What a producer on the other side says is, oh my God, I can pitch that easily, and my team can pitch that. And by the way, inside the studio where they have a whole bunch of different people that some of which aren't at all good at pitching, especially some of the people who are interns, some of the people who are assistants, some of them, that's not their thing. We're going to give them the easiest pitch there is, and they can pitch that in a heartbeat. That's our job. Right? It's like our job is to make it so that the studio can't screw it up. Now, don't tell them I said that, but they'll say it too. So, and then that's the other question. Can it be pitched up the ladder? You guys, that game. You sit 15 people around a round table and you play the game of, it was called telephone at one point, where one person has a piece of paper and it has 2 sentences on it. And they close the piece of paper up, put it in their pocket, and turn to the next person and tell them the 2 sentences. And then that person turns to the next one and tells them the 2 sentences all the way around. And by the time it comes back, the last person tells the story and then they pull out the 2 sentences. And every time I've ever been there for that, what ended up at the very end had almost nothing to do with what was on those 2 sentences. That's what that game's about. So this is the same thing. We need it to be able to be pitched up that ladder, which means our pitch needs to be so short. I have a horror script titled The Purge, and it answers the question, what would happen if for a 12-hour period, anyone in the US could commit murder and get away with it? At least I've got a chance that can be pitched up the ladder. But if I added 20 more details, if I started telling you about the lead characters and a bunch of other things, we got a problem, right? So what you do is you insulate your pitch. You design it so you can do this short version, and then you can answer their questions and tell them whatever else they need to know with powerful responses. And this, again, all assumes in the first place, you have something that's easy to pitch. Now, let's look at this. How producers are looking at characters. I hope that all this is helping you guys. Can I sell the lead character to an actor or an actress? Take a look at this movie. You remember this movie? My guess is selling to this guy was pretty damn easy. He has one of the most incredible roles ever. Selling to this lady, I'd say, was also pretty easy. She also has a equally incredible role, maybe slightly less, but it's really close. She gets to do all the same kinds of things that he gets to do. She's the one that we're seeing in the very beginning. The first time we saw anybody do kung fu running up walls, and then jumping over a street and all of that kind of thing. Both of them have incredibly interesting roles. This guy, Lawrence Fishburne, I'm guessing these two signed on, and I'm guessing he looked at the role, saw some of the things that he got to do, and just went, yes, that's me. I'm interested. Right now, I don't know how this guy decided. Maybe that's what he wanted. Maybe he didn't, but I don't care. You fill the top role and all the rest come. Anybody who's a director knows this. If you're trying to fill all the supporting roles first, that's crazy. You go find that big actor, and the moment you find that big actor, you will have 100 people fighting for those supporting roles. And they will do anything to be able to be part of it. So it's all about your lead characters. If you're writing scripts that have supporting characters that are more interesting than your leads, that's a business mistake on your part. And a lot of people do that because they're all worried about whether the lead is going to be likable. And because they're afraid of that, they have a tendency to focus on the supporting characters where it doesn't matter. So they can take risk with the supporting characters. If you do that, don't feel bad. Don't worry about it. All you've got to do is go, here, let me take that supporting role and look at the risk that I took with that character and give some of those to your lead. Your job is to make this person, and this person the three most interesting people we've ever seen in our lifetime. You do that, any actor that even reads your character introductions is going to go, wow. Now, your question is, what makes this character unique and special? And if we went through a list, we'd be able to find all three of these characters are unique and special in big ways. And then your character introduction and exit need to be incredible. How they exit, just so important. Because this is the last thing, the actor knows this. This is the last thing they're going to see. I sat down with a couple of actors at one point, handed them scripts. Cheryl and I were trying to get them to sign on. They looked through until they found their character introduction. And then I'm sitting there watching this guy, and he goes all the way into the script, and he starts thumbing backwards. And I said, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm looking for my last scene. And so I told him what page it was on. He went and looked at it. It wasn't good enough. He had a last scene that was just a character explaining his role. It was a mistake on my part. I was coming out of that meeting, I was so angry. I had not seen that. But that's what they're looking at. They're looking at how do they go in? How are they introduced? What's the first moment that anybody sees that character, and what's the exit? And these two both need to be incredibly interesting, and it's not a character giving exposition about their past. So be careful about that. It's like, what actions are they taking? Who are they showing up as? What's their dialogue? Is it the most interesting dialogue in the whole movie? What is it about them what are we learning about this character that makes them incredibly compelling? Do that, you're in business. And then what's the range of this character, right? It's like, take a look at this guy. So his range. He's going to go from this kind of messed up guy who is about to have the shock of his life. So he starts out being this guy who has a bland life, nothing going on. He's being berated by his boss. He's being treated like shit. He has to suck up, all that kind of thing. Then he has the shock of his life. He wakes up in a pod, and he has to mimic that. He has to act like that's real. And maybe it helps if they put a bunch of slime on him. I don't know. But we've got to buy that. Then he has to deal with this whole thing of learning how to become somebody who can be the one. And in the meantime, he's doing everything he can to avoid any kind of relationship because this is his destiny kind of thing. And in the end, he fails miserably and dies. And then comes back, and for the first time, he can see the Matrix. And he can defeat them. And he's in a whole different world. He's at a spiritual level we've never experienced, right? He's got a character range, but he also has a physical character range. Look at the kinds of things he gets to do. He does a lot of sitting and emoting, right? Especially when he's on the ship. But he gets to he gets to learn Kung Fu. He gets to do all kinds of Kung Fu. He gets to be in the coolest fights you ever saw. He gets to do the kind of aerial stuff that's just like, wow, people would kill for that job. Somebody wrote the whole script, in a way that would attract these three actors. And that's you. That's what you're going to do, right? So, and then it's about the coolest actions, the coolest dialogue. So how do they look at marketing? It starts with your pitch. Genre, title, high concept. And when you're talking marketing, well, let's keep going and then it'll make sense here. The producers, first, they see similar movies in their mind. They know how those were marketed. So we talked about this before. The producer is, you give them a pitch. In their mind, they're going to go to, what are the 3 or 4 movies that are similar? Did they do well at the box office? If they did well at the box office, they already know how that movie was marketed. Inside producers, this is their thing. This is what they're thinking about. This is what they're looking for. They're watching how movies are marketed, and they're watching what the box office is. So as soon as you tell them this, they already can go here. This is why, when a writer gives a pitch where they say they won't tell you the genre until the end, it's like, first, that's a really bad mistake for a bunch of reasons. One of them is because the producer is going to be searching for it the whole time, because they need to know it so they can know how this movie might be marketed. So if you're holding that back, the producer's now having to think of 3 or 4 different genres, which means they're having to look at all kinds of other things besides what you're talking about. Don't do it. Tell them the genre up front. That immediately solves one of their mysteries. Tell them the title. That tells them if you've got a title that's marketable, and give them the high concept. This says they can sell it in 30-second spots, right? Because here's what they're looking for. First, can I sell it in a 15-second spot on Instagram? Can they do that? If they can do that, then you're in business right off the bat. If they really truly can sell this movie, if they can just say one sentence and 3 or 4 visuals and some music and sell it on Instagram, you're in business. There was a movie called Fault in Our Stars. I never even heard about. It was sold on Instagram in 15-second spots to teenage girls, 12 to 17. And the reason I found out about it was because my daughter came into me and she said, hey, there's this movie coming out today. I want to go see it. I want you to go with me. Because at that point, we went to movies together. And it was a wonderful time, by the way. So now she's working all the time and doesn't have time for anything. But it was sold through 15-second spots. I told her that movie didn't exist. And then I looked it up and it's like, oh yeah, it's playing today at 2 p.m. on a Friday. And she goes, yeah, let's go. So we got there and the theater was completely packed. The seats were only at the front. There was 2 seats, front left. Those were the only ones we could get. So I'm sitting there with the screen right in front of me. So I watched the audience. That was all girls, a few moms, and one other dad. All the rest of them had seen that 15-second spot or a series of 15-second spots on Instagram. Here's the second question. Can they sell it in a 30-second TV spot? Again, if we're doing this, genre, title, high concept, and actor, they can do that in a 30-second TV spot. And if your high concept is strong enough, it'll create a hook, it'll draw people in. And then what's the 2-minute trailer? I know so many producers who have said, when I'm listening to the pitch, I'm watching the trailer. And if at the end of watching the trailer, I don't go, wow, I'm out of there. And it's like, okay, I talked with one producer who does a whole bunch of comedy movies, and he says, any pitch? He says, I'm just looking for the trailer. He says, if I'm reading the script, all I'm doing is looking for a role for an actor and a trailer. And he says, if I can see those two, we're in business. That's it. So now the key scenes. So first one, your opening scene. And I hope this is helping you guys. Your opening scene. This one came from an experience I had. I went into a producer's office. I'm sitting there waiting, and the producer comes in. He's late, and he says, hey, I'll be a minute. Here, read the opening scene. Tell me if I should option this script. I was like, what? Really? He says, yeah, read the opening scene. Tell me if I should option it. And then he goes inside. So I read the opening scene, and he goes, should I option it? That was the first thing. I came in, sat down, should I option the script? And I said, you want me to make that decision based on an opening scene? And he goes, yes. Should I? And I said, not based on this opening scene. And he goes, all right. Yeah, okay. All right, I'm turning it down. And I said, are you going to look at it? Did you read the opening scene? He goes, yeah, I read the opening scene. He says, I just want to get your opinion. He had already decided no, based on the opening scene. Now, there are some people who would say, wow, that's unfair. That and about 15 other interviews I did confirmed that some producers make the decision right then. But let me tell you, even if they don't, here's what happens when they read that opening scene. They open up the script, they start reading, and within half a page, they already know how the writer writes. Now, this is incredibly important. You may say, well, later on in the script, I wrote in a different way or something like that, but they're making a decision about the writer on page 1. I've interviewed at least 50 readers inside the system who all told me they made a decision about who the writer was on page 1. And then they said in some cases, then the writer surprised them and became better in the script. But they said in most of the cases, what they decided on page 1 played out through the rest of the script. So let me give you this piece of advice. Your opening scene, most important scene in your script, if you want them to work with you as the writer. Most important scene. It may be the only scene they read, like in my case, in that one situation. It may be that they look at that opening scene to get a taste or a feel for who the writer is and how they write. So you do not want an opening scene that is just 2 characters sitting at a table, talking back and forth and telling their backstory. You want an opening scene that challenges some lead character, that is highly compelling, that puts us in a difficult situation, and the dialogue there and the actions are all unique and powerful and incredibly interesting. You do that, and from the opening scene, they'll be saying, this is a great writer. So what I'm saying, let me say this differently. You've written the whole script. You love the whole script. Everything there is perfect. Let's pretend everything is perfect. Go back to the opening scene and make it twice as good. It's worth it. We did this all the time when we were producing. I had a lady who said to me, she had this script. I knew a producer. The script was about this airplane from 1911 or 12, or can't remember what it was. I knew a producer who had bought that plane and had a special garage built just for that plane. So I told her, I know I can get this into that producer, and I know there's a really good chance he's going to want to do it. But your opening scene is bland. And she said, I love the way I wrote that opening scene. We went back and forth for a week. At the end of a week, I said, okay, well, then you can try to sell it someplace else. I'm not taking that opening scene into that producer. And so she finally came back and she went, okay, fine. What do I have to do to the opening scene? And, and it's like, I got it. People don't want to change things, all that kind of thing. But so I said, here, we're going to do these 4 things to the opening scene. We're going to make it significantly more interesting. We're going to put conflict in it from the very, very beginning. And we're going to make sure every single line of dialogue in there is unique and not words like, hi, how are you? Because that's what her opening scene was. Her opening scene was 2 characters introducing themselves, and they were just chit-chatting. And so we brainstormed a whole bunch of different opening scenes, came up with one that was great. I took the script to the producer. I met him for lunch. We sat there across from each other. I said, oh yeah, here's the script, for whenever you're ready. While I'm ordering my meal, he glanced at the first page for about 6 seconds. He then closed it, smiled, and gave his order. So I asked him, I said, just so I know, what did you see when you looked at the first page there? And he goes, I'm in the hands of a good writer. I said, okay, so what were you actually able to internalize? And he said, I looked at the opening line on the description. And then he said, I looked at the 3 lines of dialogue. All 3 of them are great. He said, I'm going to read the whole script. I already know. I was like, wow, that was from an opening scene. It was really from an opening page that we made a really smart decision on. Okay, let me go through the rest of these so you can see them. Your inciting incident needs to be a real inciting incident, not a character just sitting on a couch making a decision to go on a trip. There needs to be something here that propels us. So this should be an incredibly interesting scene. By the time we're done with this scene, first, anybody reading it should automatically they already know they're going to read the whole script. There's no doubt. There's no question in their mind. Second, it was an inventive and interesting opening scene. Third, it sent this person on the journey. They had no choice whatsoever. Your character introduction scenes, we already talked about those. Those should be something that when an actor looks at them, they decide to sign on to this movie right then. That means they're in action. They're dealing with a difficult situation. Think about Shakespeare in Love opening. Their dialogue is amazing, and they're saying, I want to be that character doing those things that they're doing and saying those lines of dialogue. And they start fantasizing. The actor starts fantasizing about being that character from that moment on. Your Act 1 turning point, and really your midpoint and your Act 2 turning point all of these should be powerful turning points. I see so many times that either people don't know what a turning point is, or they're trying to be subtle, and they think their job is to be subtle. Please know this. Talking to studio readers, the ones that are paid, the ones that are in the union, they said they're looking for every one of these things, but when they get to a turning point, they want it to be strong. Its job is to create an experience for the audience. If this turning point and this midpoint and this turning point are weak or subtle, both of which mean the same thing in this case, if they're subtle, your script gets turned down. Make them powerful. This is a time, a major twist where life has changed for the lead character and they can't get back to where they were before. It needs to be really, really strong. And this midpoint sets up your movie where your first half is they're going on this journey. They're doing it in one emotional way. Your second half, they're still on the same journey, but everything has changed. And so we've upped the stakes, upped the ante, upped the level at which the danger for them, all of those kinds of things. They now have to change in a way that's 10 times more than they thought. This should be one of the most powerful scenes in this movie besides this one. And then, of course, your climax, which is going to be incredible. Don't hold anything back. This is the ultimate expression of the conflict. I know what I'm talking about here is structure, but what I'm really talking about is these are the scenes that matter the most. And if these scenes are incredibly powerful, then a producer will work with you on everything else. If these scenes really, if any of them are subtle or weak, it's over. And I'll tell you what they told me at the readers at the studio. They said their purpose is to find a reason to turn this script down. That's their job. That's what they are told to do. That's their purpose. And if they can't find a reason to turn it down, then it's one of the very few that squeak through. And it's because all of this worked. I asked them, what are you looking for when you're talking about reasons to turn it down? And they said two main things, structure and characters. So structure, that means any one of these. They're the ones that told me if these are subtle, if these are weak, that gives us our reason. Don't let them have it. Don't do it. So finally, two major requirements for success. I know we've been talking a lot here, but I promise you it is still worth hanging out with me on this. We have some things to say and I have some things to show you that's going to make a big difference for you. So two major requirements for success. First, do you have a great pitch? We've already talked about that, genre, title, high concept, and a succinct transformational journey. This is the movie trailer for the most part. 70% of movie trailers are this. I interviewed a producer who only does movie trailers for the studios. That's what he said. And then does the script then deliver on this pitch and the most important parts? So the script needs to fulfill the pitch. It needs to actually be the best possible fulfillment of that pitch. So when you're writing that script, you're looking to that pitch constantly and going, okay, am I delivering on it? Or did I just go off on a tangent? Have I given the story to a subplot instead of the main story? Again, great character roles and the 7 key scenes. Now, let me do a quick demo. I want to show you something here so that you can see this, because all of this comes down to you making the best decisions. So just a second here. And let's go over here. Okay. So this is ChatGPT. You guys already know this. And let me just give a quick disclaimer on this. Do not use AI to write your script. Do not. But use it to brainstorm, and you can use it for feedback. We have a whole feedback system that was designed specifically for screenwriters, but we'll talk about that another time. But use it to brainstorm. So let me just show you kind of what this is like. Because it's totally okay, according to the Copyright Office, to use AI to brainstorm, to find what it is, just to gather ideas. It's just like if you go out to, say, your writers group and you're having them brainstorm with you, or if you have a friend, or if you have a husband or wife who is brainstorming with you, right? This is the same thing. You're not going to use word for word anything that AI says, but it's incredible for being able to think outside the box. So here's what I did. This one, it's a sci-fi. The subject is a moon-based prison collapses into tunnels that were created by aliens. So that's just an idea that popped into my mind about 3 or 4 months ago. And what I did was I asked it to give me some ideas on that, so how it might play out. It gave me a concept in 25 words or less, right? Here's the main conflict, the surprising twist, a deeper layer, the intriguing world. Doing this gives you a chance to start to look. And by the way, you might look and you might go, yeah, I like this intriguing world, but I don't like this part, or whatever it is. And then that just gives you the chance to bring your creativity to the table. So I do this as a brainstorm, and then usually I keep about 20% of it plus or minus. It just depends. But I want it to help me think outside the box, right? So here I had it give us 3 different possible versions of this project. And once I have that, let's just use this one right here. The Hollow Moon Accord. So just a second. Once I have that, now I'm going to take it a little further and ask it to create something else. And again, just we'll take a look at this real fast. When a prison on the moon collapses, inmates uncover an alien peace treaty site guarded by an ancient AI that mistakes them for the enemy who broke in. Okay, that would be very bad. So it's the one that I just selected randomly. But if I was doing this, I would really look at this and think about it. Then we go down here, and now it's creating characters for us. So we have a role, we have the character traits, we have their motivation, we have their wound. This is part of a character profile. It's actually about half of our character profile, a little less than half. Then we also have, why does this character matter? Worth knowing in your story. So we've got a hero here. Then we've got another character. This is Lyra. Then a third, and then a fourth. One of them is going to be our antagonist. One of them is our protagonist. So this, you may look and go, well, I don't want to be locked into those characters. That's okay. You ask it to brainstorm some more, right? Once we've given it the prompt that specifically defines all of this stuff, we can have it do all kinds of things. And then we'll take it one step further. And here, what I'm doing is asking it to create a structure. Now, let me pause here before I do the one last thing that I think you'll really be interested in. But look, we've got the Act 1. And here I ask it to create a 4-act structure. You could do a 3-act, you can do a 5-act, you can do whatever you choose. But Act 1, it's got the opening, the inciting incident, turning point, right? New plan in action, midpoint, turning point, right? Then the 3rd act, then the 4th act. Our purpose here, again, is to be able to look at something and say, okay, I like these things. I don't like this other stuff. What if I did this? Right? It's to trigger creativity. And it's also to have you never be stuck again. So this gives you a chance to brainstorm, to think outside the box. You may have thought of your project in one way, and now maybe you do this, and now you see 5 other things you could do. Or you see the one thing that is going to make this an incredible movie. You adopt that and you keep moving forward. Again, we're not having AI write anything. What we're doing is we're brainstorming different openings, different inciting incidents. We're looking at different possibilities. We're using it to trigger our creativity and to think outside the box. Now, let's take this one step further. So here. And again, what we have up here is we've got a project that we created in the beginning that had like 4 or 5 parts to it that are important. We then have the characters, you know, and again, if you don't like something, like I do like this one right here. She's tactical, jaded, deeply loyal, and haunted. I think that's important for this particular project. She's haunted. So when we go down in those, you know, into the alien parts, this is going to plague her. Sometimes you're going to see stuff and you're going to go, wow, that's amazing. Like I may not keep all of these, but this one definitely I would keep. Sometimes you'll look at their wound and you'll go, no, that's not it. Not this character. No, she's got a completely different wound than that. But at least you're getting to think about it. You're getting to try things on, right? This is important because there are people out there who think, you know, they heard somebody tell them not to use AI, and so they think that means that they are going to be restricted for life from using it. Otherwise, people will think bad things about them. Please know, people inside this industry are already using this. And I've talked with managers who have clients that are using it. You know, I've talked with 2 producers who are like, I have a writer, if you could send this to them, this right here, that would really help me. We're trying to think outside the box on this project that he wrote a first draft on. But let me now take you to the very last part, down here. So the last thing we're doing here is having it write a pitch. And this may not be the exact pitch you're going to give a producer, but look, genre, title, high concept, right off the bat. It's really clear. And if you don't like the concept, then you work with it and you brainstorm a bunch of other ways on your own or back with AI, whatever you choose. Then I had it listed in 3 acts. So if you're talking with a producer and you say, you know, genre, title, high concept, and they go, wow, that's amazing. Tell me how the story goes. In about a minute and a half, I can tell them the whole story. And I can tell them act 1 begins with blah, blah, blah. Then act 2 happens, you know, act two happens here. And I take them to that, and act 3, if you choose to say that. You might just tell the story and put in what the big turning points are between them that make this a great movie. But you've got it. And I want you to look at what just happened. Even with me doing all of that talking, this took about 8 minutes, right? Eight minutes with me doing all that talking. If you were doing it on your own, the truth is I can do this whole thing in less than 3 minutes. And then I pull it out, I print it out, I go to lunch, I sit there and I go over the whole thing and I mark out everything I don't like. I only leave the things I do like, and then I start brainstorming new ways, new things that will go with the story. Because once you're able to look at all of this, once you're able to see the whole thing that I just gave you, you'll start coming up with all kinds of ideas, right? Because you have something to work at or work with. You're not just looking at a blank page. So this will change your life as a writer. Now, let me take it a step further so you know where this goes, because there is more to this. Just a second, we'll go back here. Okay. There is a lot more to this. So if you want to sell your next script, here's my advice. Brainstorm a bunch of concepts. We have people coming into this class right now. They're brainstorming concepts right now. They're doing the process that I just showed you. And not because, again, because they're going to keep everything that's there. I'm suggesting that they brainstorm a bunch of them, that they build in character and structure, that they build in characters and structures that will match the concept, right? So when they're looking at this, the characters and structure, they're looking at the concept. If I love the concept, then when I make my changes to this, all of this is about delivering on this concept. Once you have 5 to 10 possible projects, choose the best of all of them. And that's the one you bring into the class. Now, here's what that does. Right off the bat, before you even start, you have front-loaded your chance of success. You didn't just write something that popped into your mind, right? This is the way most people do it. I've talked with at least 3,000 writers who I'll say, they'll tell me their pitch and I'll say, how did you come up with that? And they'll go, wow, well, this thing happened and it just popped into my mind. And I'll say, then what happened? And then they'll say, then I started writing. And it's like, no, we're not doing that. But I understand if you've done that before, I've done that before. You come up with 5 to 10 different possible projects. You then choose the best of those. So you are coming in with the very best of the projects that you brainstormed in a unique way. Then you went through and worked with them to take them to an even higher level. And you're picking the very best of all of those. That gives you a significantly better chance of selling when you go through this program. So then you write it at a professional level. And that's what we're doing. Now, if you're going to be a writer, why not give yourself a real chance? Sometimes I don't understand. I actually had somebody tell me he wanted to learn and do everything on his own. And I said, that's going to, even if you're interviewing producers, it took me 5 years to really understand this stuff. And then it took me 10 years after that to get to the key things that would make it incredibly easy for a writer. So if you're going to be a writer, why would you put yourself in that painful spot? Why would you say, no, I'm not going to learn it the easiest possible way. Instead, I'm going to make it as difficult as possible on myself to accomplish one of the most important and valuable goals in my life that, by the way, only 1 out of maybe 500 are succeeding, 1 out of 100 at best. It's like, be that 1 out of 100, step in. I'm telling you, 95 to 98% of pitches, and this is not an exaggeration, are presented without considering the producer's needs. Most people don't know even 1/5 of what we talked about today. Really. Every part of this program, everything I'm about to show you is designed to increase your success with producers. This particular program we created after I'd already been interviewing producers for 18 years. And during that 18 years, I interviewed about 700 producers. I interviewed 100 agents and managers. So after we'd done all of that, we created the program I'm about to show you. We also had an incredible development team. We had writers who had all of them had either been optioned or been produced. We had a studio exec in there. We knew what we were doing. So every single part of this program is all designed to increase your success with producers. You're going to create the pitch first, just like A-list screenwriters do, right? And then you'll write a script that delivers powerfully on it. You will make sure that you have a high concept from the very beginning that gets producers' attentions. You will create characters that are specifically designed to attract actors. This isn't something that we go, well, maybe if you did this or maybe if you did that. We know what it is. I talked with 23 different actors, producers. I went to their companies. I interviewed them about what caused their actors to say yes. The skills you are going to learn are all about how to work with a producer or an agent. So this stuff, all of this stuff is not taught in almost any other screenwriting class. And there's like little bits of it where they learned it from me. I was the guy saying high concept 15, 18 years ago, while all the other teachers were telling me not to teach that. Now they're all teaching it based on my model. So, and this, by the way, what we're giving you here is better than anything they've ever taught you. And then I'm going to give you a series of AI prompts. First, the AI prompt to design 10 high-quality projects and pick the best. And then we'll give you 50 other pro-level AI prompts to brainstorm every part of your project. Now, you can choose how many of those you use or don't use, but I'll tell you, once you get into it and you realize this is something that if I can brainstorm it in a different way, I can find what will make this script great. I can find what will make it sell. So here's the program. Writing Incredible Movies. It does exactly what it says. This title is not hype, I promise you. Let me just walk you through it. I want you to see the process that we use and the order in which we do it. It starts with your pitch. So very first thing, you're going to create your pitch. And by the way, you'll come in with, your 10 projects that you brainstormed. And out of those 10, you'll pick one and it'll have a pitch already. But our job here is to look at that pitch, and I'll give you a series of criteria, and you will look to see, can I make it sell better? Can I make it stronger, right? You start with the pitch because this is how A-list screenwriters write spec scripts. They start with the pitch. And they make sure they have a pitch that can sell first, which is what basically you're going to do. Then from there, you go pitch to outline to make sure that the story absolutely works all the way across your entire outline. From there, now we go to, and up here, you'll work with structure too. We go to characters that will attract actors. So you are designing these lead characters to pitch to actors. If you can find a way to get your character to be something you can easily pitch to an actor, it's going to be an amazing character for this story. Module 4, then you make the outline incredible. And what we do on this, most people, when they write a script, they write it on 2 levels. They have a surface level, and then right below that is this, the subtext level. We write ours on 5 different levels. So theirs are missing what I would say are 3 levels that show up in a professional script. You're going to end up with an incredible outline that delivers on all 5 levels, which will then make it easy to write an incredible script. Now that you have that outline, now you're coming over here to module 5, and I'm going to give you a high-speed model for how to write your first draft incredibly fast. You're coming from an outline. You are coming from these amazing characters. You know what your pitch is. You can write this thing incredibly fast. We've had people who wrote the entire draft of their script inside of 4 days. And it's like, it's easy. Once you know this high-speed model, this is essentially a model that allows you to be able to take the fastest you ever write and double or triple that speed. Once you know that, you can fly through this first draft. And really think about it. What a first draft is about is making sure that all the decisions you made up till this point and your outline gets onto the page so you can start working with something. You have something there to work with. From there, we go over here, and now we're going to go to the second draft, and it's all about solving the problems early. We changed our whole model based on what some of the script consultants we talked with said. I asked them, I said, okay, I interviewed about 7 script consultants about this. And I said, I want to ask you this one question. So you're getting scripts that the writer believes are pretty much already done. And they said, yeah, about 50% of them. And I said, okay, of that 50%, what percentage of those scripts, the one that the writer believes they're already done and is just trying to get a recommend, what percentage of those scripts have a major problem beneath the surface? One of them said 90%. The other ones said between 70 to 90%. I'm talking, they think their script is completely done and they have a major problem under the surface. They either have a structure problem, they have an outline problem, they have a character problem, they have a plot-oriented problem, some kind of sequence problem. They have a major problem under the surface. So what we did was we went through and we made a list of all those problems, all the main problems that somebody could have that's under the surface. We created a grid. You go through, you figure out what's the problem that you have, you look to the grid, and let's say it's structure. You'll go to the structure part, and it'll list here are the 3 different problems with structure. Great. And then it'll immediately give you a solution you can apply right now to solve that problem. So by the time you're done with your second draft, you will have a problem-free draft that 50% of the people who write don't even have after they've done 10 drafts. Your second draft will be problem-free. Then it's about elevating quality. So on your third draft, I'm going to give you a whole bunch of different ways to look at the big picture stuff and elevate the quality. How to elevate your structure. Your structure's good. There's nothing wrong with it. How can you make it twice as strong? How to elevate your characters. How can you make them twice as compelling to an actor? How to elevate your scenes. I've got so many different ways to be able to take any scene and write it in a better way. So you will go through in module 7, you'll do your third draft. You'll look at every one of these. If there's any way you can elevate this one, you'll choose to do it. If there's any way you can elevate your lead characters, you'll do it. Any way you can elevate your most important scenes, you will do it. Now we come into module 8. You've got everything working up till this point. At this point, you've got dialogue in there. Some of it's good, some of it's not. We haven't looked at dialogue yet. Now we're going to focus only, on amazing dialogue. I'll give you a whole series of different ways to be able to take the same line and make it 2, 3, 4, 5 times as interesting, right? To be able to take the same line that is straight on the surface and build subtext into it. To be able to take the same line that is bland and create intrigue in that line, in and around that line, right? We have a whole series of different ways you can take any line of dialogue and make it so much more compelling, especially for your lead actors. Now, finally, then we go to wordsmithing to perfection. You're already good at wordsmithing, but there's 2 things I'm going to show you here that you'll find out inside the class that are critical to your success from a wordsmithing perspective. They come from exactly what producers have told me they need, that 99% of the writers are not doing. After that, then we go to the advanced marketing module. So here, it's all about getting your script read, and it's about building a network of producers, agents, and managers to read this script and your future scripts. We've got some amazing models about this. I help people get into this industry all the time. People who've gone through this class, once you've gone through this class, you come into our alumni, our Screenwriting U alumni, where over 600 of those writers have made deals. So they know what they're doing. A bunch of them, over 100 of them have agents and managers. So there are people there that can help you in ways you never even thought of. They also have been through my programs, so they know what we're talking about. Pick whichever link you want. And in fact, let me just go over here and tell you about this. Regular price on this program is $12.99. You probably know that from before. I'll give you a special in just a moment, but this is a 6-month class. Every day of this class, there's 100 lessons. You are going to be learning something new. You are going to be applying it to your script. This isn't about, in fact, there's probably 3 lessons in this class where you don't immediately go to your script. The other 97, you go right to your script. You're either creating a character, you're creating a concept, you're creating a pitch, you're creating a scene, you know, whatever it is, you're creating your structure all the way through. You are working with your script. There are 38 mastery sessions that take what you're learning here to a whole new level. And we have 50 high-level AI prompts. Like, for instance, when we get to the end of this, and if you've ever had problems writing a query letter or something like that, I've got an AI prompt that nobody else has ever seen out there that will create a query letter. You'll give it a summary. It'll turn it into a query letter that is highly compelling and designed exactly the way producers want to see query letters. We've got AI prompts for your phone pitches. We've got AI prompts to help you design if you're pitching on one of those Zoom meetings out there. You know, we back up. We've got AI prompts to help you create your character profiles and to make sure you're filling in all the blanks properly and all of those kinds of things. These don't replace who you are. What they do is they augment who you are as a writer. They give you other ways to think of it so you can think outside the box. And over time, the more you use them, the more creative you become. You start to be able to think on multiple levels instead of just 1 or 2. Now, this program starts on May 19th. That gives you 10 days right now. Brainstorm a new project every single day. On May 19th, pick the very best, come into the class and go for it. The regular price on this is $12.99. I'm going to give you the best price we have ever sold this at. And that is, it's exactly half price. You can get in for $6.49. So that gives you this program that many people have paid $12.99. Some lucky ones paid in the $900 range. You're getting it at half price right now. What we're trying to do at the present moment is get as many people in as possible because I'm taking groups to market. That's what we're doing with that group I told you about that has 55 script requests right now. They're going to be marketing for the next 4 weeks. By the time we're done, they're going to be at somewhere between 300 to 400 script requests, and many of them are going to make deals. So right now, I'm looking to bring more people in so that we can take more people to market so that we can have more deals. If you want to sign up, just write these 2 links down, pick whichever one works best for you. This one, bit.ly, bit.ly/SU, as in screenwriting U, -WIM, Writing Incredible Movies. So again, it's bit.ly/SU-WIM. No spaces, no capitals. Put that in your browser where you normally put a web address, click return, and start the adventure of your writing lifetime. If you need a payment plan, absolutely we can do that. Write this one down, bit.ly, bit.ly/WIM-payments. Notice there's an S on the end there. So again, no capitals, no spaces, bit.ly, bit.ly/WIM-payments. That one will get you in for, I think it's 7 payments of $99. So if you need a payment plan, totally fine. You know, for less than $100 a month, you can become a great writer. And all of the stuff that you're going to learn in here, there may be a few things that you know, there may be a third of it that you know if you're really good. But I'm going to tell you, if you're actually looking for what you don't know and what's going to make you great, this program, at least 70% of it's going to be new to you. It's the things that most writers, 98% of the writers, don't do that the A-list screenwriters are doing. And as soon as you make that shift from don't know, don't, and doing the wrong things to working with the A-list techniques, you instantly rise. If you're the worst writer in your writers group at the present moment, by the time we're done with this program, you very likely will be the best writer in that group. And everybody there will be looking up to you, and you will have the best chance you've ever had of being able to make a deal or win major contest. We've had people who've gone through this program who have won Nickel, Page, Final Draft, or excuse me, Final Draft Big Break Contest, and Austin Film Festival. It makes a tremendous difference in the quality of your writing, and it makes a huge difference in your chance of success. So, you know, this is your chance. Give your writing life this gift, because it will change everything for you, and it'll give you the chance that you deserve. So with that, I want to say thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope there was something that you learned here that will move you forward, whatever you choose. And I promise you, if you join this class, it will be one of the best things you ever did for your writing and really for your confidence and capability as a great writer. So this is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, wishing you the absolute best. Bye-bye, everyone.